Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and back with me, as always, my co-host Danny Gillette, and we're here to talk some Nebraska football. We're closing in on the season. 10 days away, if I'm not mistaken. That's the
Yep.
21st. So we're literally 10 days away. Next Thursday night, we're going to be taking on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and it's an exciting time to be a Nebraska fan. And how are you doing this morning, Danny?
Good. We got a lot of good things in Nebraska land. Some pro Huskers really standing out during preseason. We got some news from Matt Rule. We got 10 days until Minnesota. Things are heating up, and I love it. It hasn't been a boring offseason, but it's going to be nice to stop doing speculation and actually start talking about games.
Yeah, and getting able to watch this team and watch Matt Rule, and but you did. There's you said there's some news from Matt Rule. There's always news when Matt Rule, like he's one of the most
Yeah.
open coaches. I mean, like he just says a lot. He says a lot of things, not wasteful stuff. I don't think, but
No.
anyway, it's kind of refreshing, and I think he gets how much people care about this program. He has said that he's never been asked about the depth chart,
I
this
just
much.
I
So
was just thinking that. Yeah.
it's like, yeah, man, this is you had to know what you're getting into. Like this is everything in Nebraska. I mean, like you look at, even a place like Michigan, the state of Michigan, there's the Wolverines, the Spartans, the Lions, the Tigers, the Red Wings, and in Nebraska, all that's put into one thing. So I
Yeah.
just think people don't understand what it is. And it's like when you live in Nebraska, I when I lived there, at least I don't know if it's still like that, but on game days when you go into like department stores and stuff, not that people really do that as much, but in the mall, like they used, instead of like the music, they play the Nebraska game on the radio. Like on the stores and TVs, instead of movie games, they got the Nebraska game on. Like it's everywhere with you. So that's the Nebraska culture, and that's just why it means so much to everybody.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at how much this team means to people, it's really no surprise that people take it so seriously, and people love to watch this team and rally behind this team. Like was said before, Nebraska's the only show. Nebraska's the only show as far as sports go in the state, and this team means a lot to so many people, generations of people. And it's also nice as a writer. Matt Rule's transparency gives us a lot of things to break down during what was a slow time of July and even a little bit of August, but that slow time is going to change. Even still, it's quite the juxtaposition to previous coaching staffs where we barely got any news. We didn't know what the heck was going on, and it's nice that he's willing to share the information. And there were some things he shared on Saturday that I thought were uh, really kind of interesting to share.
Yeah, definitely. There was definitely some some things that he said that kind of surprised me, and then we'll get into that here. Make sure that you guys, before we get into our discussion today, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Get into the comments section, hit the like and share, and make sure you have your notifications on so you'll be aware anytime we come up with an episode. We're trying to get ourselves to 1,000 subscribers and hopefully way beyond that. And so we're trying to build up our platform, and we've also got a lot of great content. We write a lot of stuff for huskerbigred.com, so check us out there as well. But yeah, so I think the biggest news item to me, I guess, is going to be Gabe Ervin. There's been a competition at running back throughout the fall. Anthony Grant almost had 1,000 yards last year, but Gabe Ervin was the starter in 2021. He just hasn't quite been healthy, but he looks like an absolute beast right now, and he runs the ball extremely well. He looked great in that scrimmage, at least the video that we saw. There was one play he broke like 3 tackles. So anyway, like you said, Matt Rule said he was the starter. He did talk about the fumbling issue with Anthony Grant, but yeah, let's just get into it. What are your thoughts on Gabe Ervin as RB1, clear RB1 right now?
Well, I thought, we talked about revealing information. I thought the fact that Rule revealed that Anthony Grant was having fumbling issues was interesting, just because you don't really hear that kind of depth from a coach. But, I think Gabe Ervin, this is his time to shine. He's been bogged down by injuries and stuff, and people will complain, oh, he hasn't showed anything at Nebraska and this and that. Well, he's been hurt. And as long as he can stay healthy, I think he can really make an impact. And, it's kind of interesting because if you remember, Matt Rule was really high on Gabe Ervin during the spring. And so to see that kind of carry over and to see Matt Rule still have confidence in Ervin, himself, makes me think that this isn't a knee-jerk decision, but a culmination of seeing things in the spring, Ervin having a strong camp, and earning the title as the top running back.
Yeah, you said it. He earned it. I mean, throughout the spring, he's clearly, invested himself in the weight room with the strength and conditioning program, which I think is going to be,
A
you
lot of
know,
kids have too.
yeah, and that's a big part of their game too. I mean, and I think we mentioned on here before, but like there was a thread of like the parents thanking, the strength and conditioning staff for what they've done, during this spring, with the nutrition and the weightlifting, and it's not one person, it's a whole program, and you can really see the difference that it's made, like visibly with players. So I think Nebraska's in a good spot there. I think they were behind the times. I just don't think that they were doing as many of the things, with nutrition wise and stuff as some of the other programs, are doing. Like, and Matt Rule, I think, has really upgraded that operation. And I think that's also where it helps having like an NFL head coach, because, they're doing all that stuff at the highest level. And and that's the thing, is Nebraska, they've got the resources. So it's just like Matt Rule just basically has to tell Trev Alberts, like,
Yeah.
this is what I need. And he's like, here you go, buddy. Like even the thing that stands out to me is like his wife, Rule's wife, when she saw his office or like the new facilities and stuff, and she's like, "Yeah, you better win here because there's no excuse not to," and there isn't. I mean, yeah, you can make up reasons why Nebraska maybe isn't Alabama, but there's no reason this team shouldn't be winning 8 to 10 games every single year.
And there's no reason that this team, can't recruit either, honestly, in terms of, the new facility that they're building and then the vision that this coaching staff has. I mean, you look at the 2023 and 2024 recruiting classes, and, we're seeing, better athletes come in as well. So, I think the fact, just getting back to the nutrition and things like that, I mean, I saw a picture of Malachi Coleman on Saturday, and he put on some really good weight. He looked really, really good. I know you said Nate Borkature has looked really good as well, and Bryce Turner has put on put on a lot of muscle. So it's really good to see you know strength and conditioning as a whole, not just from the players, but from the strength and conditioning staff as well, being taken seriously. And some people will say, maybe they're not working hard enough because they don't have, the puke buckets or whatever that, back in the day that they had. But there's if you're training to puke, then you're not training correctly. I would rather you not puke and have proper form, proper reps, all this, and know how to work out than to just train until you puke. That's the dumbest thing that you can do.
Yeah, I wonder if they are still, if Donovan Raiola is still coaching them to puke at the offensive. I haven't heard that at all. Those, but that also could have to do
Well,
with
they were
some
probably
diet.
puking because they were out of shape and they didn't have proper nutrition. And they like
Well,
seriously,
that's
like
true.
yeah.
If Especially if you overeat too, because anybody who's if you overeat and then go practice football, it's not fun. Especially if you're in the heat. I mean, I could. That's just a recipe for
And I can
that to happen.
understand if you're a lineman. I mean, as a team manager, I sat at the offensive lineman table at lunch and dinner, and they had like 5 to 6 plates per setting.
Yeah.
So I get it, but it helps when you have just like with the offensive line and the personnel and the non-spread offense. It helps when you have people that can guide you to make proper nutritional decisions and have the support of others around you as a team, not an individual unit, not an individual nutrition plan. It helps when everybody's on the same page, regardless of what it is.
For sure. And I'm back to this running back discussion. I think Anthony Grant, I don't know if it's just Matt Rule's way of, being like, hey, it's time, you got to step up. And, he's kind of said things about Anthony Grant before. I'm not anything on the field, but I think he said something about like, didn't he miss a practice or something? Maybe I could
For
be
spring
wrong
ball,
about
yeah,
that.
for spring ball.
But at any rate, I still think he's got a great chance to contribute, as long as he, you know, doesn't kind of have a negative attitude about this. Just take care of the football, and look, that's understandable, because those types of things, the fumbles and stuff, like that's why Nebraska's lost a lot of these close games. And you just can't, especially with a pretty young team. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys that have played football and they transferred in, but this is still a pretty young team, and you just can't make mistakes. The margin for error is still pretty thin, and Matt Rule understands that. And Another thing that I thought was interesting, we talked about Ramir Johnson being the third down back, and that was music to my ears. Getting him out there as a receptions. He was totally underutilized last year, and he can be an electrifying player, especially if he's touching the ball 5, 10, 15 times a game. So I'm excited to see him in that role, and I think this coaching staff will know how to use him.
And players like Grant and Johnson, right? This isn't going to be a Mark Whipple offense where you're going to have one running back rush for maybe 10 to 15 times a game. I truly believe that there's going to be a lot of carries to go around. I don't think, even though Gabe Ervin is running back one, I don't think that's going to mean that Anthony Grant and Ramir Johnson get 0 touches. I believe we're going to see a healthy dose of running the football. And hey, if you have Anthony Grant and Ramir Johnson as your running back 2 and 3, then I'd say that's a pretty solid room.
Definitely, and I think even Emmett Johnson too, has gotten a lot of conversation recently as a guy that can contribute, and also maybe as a receiver, as a kick return guy. So, I think that that's interesting. Another one we talked about, the kicker competition. So let's kind of get into that. That's going to be obviously, I think, pretty important because look, like I said, not a huge. I don't think Nebraska is going to be like trucking teams in the Big Ten by, if they're winning games, it's going to be somewhat. They're going to have to play good defense and be good on special teams. So, can Tristan Alvano and Tommy Bleekrode, one of these guys? It's still been kind of back and forth. It doesn't sound like it's been like a high end competition. Nobody's really seizing the day. So what do you think about that? Who do you think is going to end up being the kicker one for Nebraska?
I don't like hearing that at all, to be honest with you. I really don't like hearing that at all. I mean, we've had kicking issues that have plagued us for forever. And, I think that the fact that it's still kind of shaky is a
And
little bit
Timmy
concerning.
Bleekrode. Sorry, I messed up
And,
the name.
no, it's all good. It's early in the morning, but, uh, I really do think that Tristan Alvano may have a shot at winning this kicking competition as a freshman, which would be very impressive. But quite honestly, I just want to hear more reports, more good reports out of the kicking game than what I've heard so far. Because you talk about fumbles killing us and things like that. Not having a kicking game has destroyed us in the past.
Yeah, and maybe if Timmy Bleekrode would make more field goals, maybe I would remember his name. So, no, I'm just kidding. Sorry about that, but at any rate, I mean, he did miss some big kicks though. Like I said, the Northwest, and they were not like they were gimme field goals either. But
No,
it
they were
would,
tough, honestly. But
like we've said before, it'd be nice to have, like I mean, the Alex Henry days when we were like Nebraska was one of the elite programs in terms of kicking, and like I know that Tristan Alvano wants to be that kind of kicker, and I think he can be. He showed that in the state championship game last year. So I feel confident that he'll do well, like when it's time to shine. But hopefully hopefully he emerges as the guy. I feel like that's the ideal scenario. I mean, you could still let Timmy handle kickoffs, I guess, if that's like the best thing, or maybe not. I don't know, but I do feel like that Alvano, if it's close or tied, like you always have that conversation, like, is it better to do a veteran? Or I think if it's pretty even, I don't know. To me, I feel like I would just go with Alvano, but that's my thought.
yeah, and like as a kicker, you have a little bit more, like you don't have to worry about reads or formations and plays and stuff like that. You just have to worry about if you're lining up and if your leg is strong. And of course, you have to factor in the wind conditions. It's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but it's not like there's a level of, remembering the playbook, learning the playbook, and stuff like that. A lot of it just comes down to skill. And if Alvano, is, deemed by the coaching staff to be more accurate and, you know, trustworthy in terms of kicking at the end of the day, then, maybe he gets the job.
And then just a few other, excuse me, news and notes to cover, I guess, from the past few days before we can talk some recruiting and stuff. Like Phelan Sanford, the kind of veteran safety, played over 200 snaps last year on special teams. Went from walk on, he was put on scholarship. Matt Rule also said that there's another player that's been put on scholarship, another walk on, but that it's going to be announced at a later date. And I have to believe it's Alex Bullock at this point. I mean, I don't know who else it would be on the roster that doesn't already have a scholarship that's like on the two deep. Are there any other names that you or anyone else you can think that would be?
Not that I can think of now, but we'll have to see when it's announced. I'm assuming maybe today? Or
Yeah, I don't know what I'm not sure what the deal is, if why they're waiting. Maybe they're trying to, do one of those kind of surprise things where they surprise the kid. But his brother just got put on scholarship, so it would make sense. And it does sound like he's going to be one of the guys that's playing that, like, wide receiver and probably on special teams. And Sanford, is a key special teams guy. He's probably not going to play a ton in the secondary, but he's going to see a lot of snaps, probably like on almost every special teams unit, and those are important. I think that's important that Matt Rule is really valuing like elite special teams, and that's good programs do that. Good programs don't look at special teams as just like a throwaway, because it's not. It's a third of the game, and we saw how under Scott Frost. I mean, Nebraska's special teams under Scott Frost were terrible, and usually, because the thing is, like, good special teams come down to like really good attention to detail, and we know Nebraska was really bad at that. And I think Ed Foley is gonna. I mean, out of all the coordinators, I might have as much confidence in him as any of them. And I really believe in Tony White, but I just think that Ed Foley is going to help Nebraska's special teams like improve by leaps and bounds this season.
Phelan Sanford joined Nebraska in 2019 as a redshirt freshman, so he's been with the program for a while. He's seen all the ups and downs, and good on him for getting a scholarship. I would have to think like the uh the Bullock brothers have been, making noise throughout camp. We've heard praise from the coaching staff about both brothers, so it would be nice to see, one of them get a scholarship, and you know, kind of, again, it goes back to rewarding hard work. And Bullock and Sanford are two guys that have really kind of worked hard. Bullock in camp and Sanford throughout his Nebraska career, and so it's good to see them, at least Sanford for right now, get a scholarship.
Yep, and yeah, we'll see. Who else it kind of comes down to, but yeah, it's been really. And speaking of Bullock, John Bullock, it sounds like from what I was reading from Sean Callahan, is that he's probably going to be rotating with Nick Heinrich and Luke Reimer as an inside linebacker. And I mean, that's not a huge shock. We talked about this on Saturday in our live chat. So if you didn't see that, you can check the replay out there at our YouTube channel, but. We talked. I mean, the guy got a single digit, so it's like he's going to be
Yeah.
playing, and I think that's a great sign. He's a former safety, so I mean, Nebraska's always been trying to find those guys that can cover at linebacker, and I think that's been a really great move by Tony White and this coaching staff to bump him up to linebacker.
Yeah, and another guy who's been making noise is Cam Lenhart, and Matt Rule kind of talked about it on Saturday. He is taking reps with Blaze Gunnerson at defensive end. So you talk about this freshman class making an impact. Cam Lenhart may be another one in short order.
Yeah, and that's a guy that if there's like an either or title, that he might be like taking an eraser to that or pretty soon. And that's nothing against
Hmm.
Blaze Gunnerson. I mean, Cam Lenhart is just a dude, and it's weird that it was kind of like when he was getting recruited. It's one of those guys like, why isn't he getting more heavily recruited? And sometimes it just that's the way it works out. Teams' boards fill up, and whatever. But I mean, he was at IMG and he played well this spring. So yeah, it's good to see him. He's got the body type, and Matt Rule talked about how mature he is. And that's the thing about the IMG program is you play a big time talent. You play a national schedule, a lot of teams. I'm not saying that, the local high school teams don't play as strong a schedule, but IMG is like going out and scheduling some of the best programs in the country. So, what he's seeing isn't going to be that big of a jump. And so it's really good to see him contributing. I think Prince William Amalian's going to as well as a pass rusher. I just think that Lenhart is more suited to hold up against the run, and that's what you need to be able to do if you're going to play on first down in the Big Ten.
There's a reason why Alabama, Ohio State, all those programs, you see so many IMG guys, because they're prepared well, they're ready, and IMG develops players really, really well. And so I think the fact that Nebraska was able to kind of seal the deal with Leonard, and by that I mean he originally committed on the 25th of August last year, and then he decommitted, and then he was able to kind of circle back and you know join this program with the new coaching staff. So the fact that Nebraska was able to close the door on that recruitment, now he's here, and he should give Nebraska some pass rushing skills that they have desperately needed.
So one thing, just to finally to a final news and note before we transition to recruiting, rotating team captains. Matt Rule also talked about this. Instead of naming, four team captains for the season, he's going to rotate each one of them, and then sounds like they would pick captains, during a bowl game. Not, I mean, I guess that doesn't. I don't know why that would just be another rotation, but at any rate, you wrote an article
That's
about
what
it
I was
on
wondering.
HuskerBigRed.com. So what do you think about it?
I love it because when you're named a team captain for the entirety of a season, it's easy to kind of rest on your laurels a little bit. Like you have the title, and you're not gonna show up every week and bring your best and things like that. But there are players, maybe some unheralded players, who will, and that gives players an opportunity to another incentive to work towards something, being named team captain for that week. I love the idea. I mean, it also helps maybe some of the underclassmen kind of really, you know, begin to make their mark on the program and continue to develop strong leaders within the program once the seniors leave and the upperclassmen leave. And so I absolutely love it. I think it's a great idea. And I'm kind of with you. I don't understand what the difference between naming captains before a bowl game is and how that differentiates from just, switching off another week. But what I'm wondering is if maybe they'll name team captains before the bowl game, and then that will carry over into next season, maybe.
Yeah, I guess that would work if some of them weren't seniors or whatever. But
Yeah,
at any rate, I think it will be good. Yeah, it'll keep guys on their toes and just it'll just and the other thing is it'll give the staff a chance. And who knows, I don't know, I didn't really listen. I don't know if he's going to name them or if it'll be a player vote thing, but it'll give more players a chance to be highlighted. And I don't think being whoever, like if Matt I don't think Matt Rule, like, picking the wrong team captain, is going to make a big difference on whether they win the game or not at the end of the day. So I think it's it is a good thing, I think, for the players, and I think it's another tool to keep them motivated and to
yeah.
have others showcase their leadership skills. But at the end of the day, I've always thought the team captains thing was kind of overrated, just a little bit.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, why do they need to be motivated? They should be motivated to play the game." Once you get into the Octobers and November, the season really starts to drag on. So to have that little extra motivation throughout the course of a week is never a bad thing.
And great coaches are they're masters at motivating people, and that's what Matt Rule, I think that he's really good at that. I think he's done a great job of finding the pulse of this team, at least from what we've seen. But it's easy to be that way and say that all that stuff when everything's going well, right? Yeah, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. So we'll see, once this team faces some adversity, which I think it will at some point. We'll see, how he responds and how the team responds. And but I think he's building the culture to allow it to respond in a positive way. um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so at any rate, let's not that there's a ton of recruiting news out, but some notable stuff on Sunday from Jayshawn Ross, who's one of the top targets left on the board in the 2024 class. Probably, I definitely would say the top five at this point. There's not a ton of them, but he's the top guy at edge, ranked 377th in the 24/7 composite, 6'4", 220. Not committed anywhere, hasn't been committed anywhere, at least publicly, but put out something about how he was reopening his recruitment. He put out a top five last month that had Nebraska, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Michigan, and Penn State. But not all those teams are really actively recruiting him. So I don't know if he was trying to talk about a silent commitment, or if he was just trying to say I'm expanding beyond my top five list. Well, how did you interpret that tweet?
I thought maybe it was a silent commitment, but now I'm wondering if he's expanding his top five list. This is why I hate silent commitments because you never know, where, for example, Nebraska stood in a recruitment like this. But you know, uh, I'm just wondering maybe if he's opening his list up a little bit and seeing what other offers he can get.
Yeah, so I think that you're right on that point. I think that's what he's doing. I guess the way I've thought about it, after I thought about it for a little while, either way, I don't think. I mean, I guess if he's silently committed to like Oklahoma and he decommitted, then it could be good for Nebraska. But I don't. That doesn't sound like the case to me. It sounds like he wants to expand it beyond his top five. And so, in terms of him committing to Nebraska soon, I don't think that that's a great thing. He's clearly not satisfied, I guess, with the list that he has right now. I'm not saying that Nebraska's out of it, but it just, to me, at least says that they've got work to do to convince him. Because if he was convinced, because there was talk about him committing this month, that he was going to commit before the season or whatever. So, I mean, if he was convinced that Nebraska was the place, then I think he would be closer to making, like a commitment date announcement than he would be to reopening his recruitment. So I don't know what you think about that, but that's my takeaway right now is that Nebraska's in it, but if he's looking for other places, that tells me that Nebraska still has work to do to shut this down.
Yeah, I mean, you never count out a recruit with this coaching staff, but I don't necessarily like our chances at this point. I figured, like you said, if he wanted to be a part of the program, he would commit. I mean, this coaching staff has a good track record just over the past couple months alone of sealing the deal if they really, really want a recruit. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath that Nebraska will be able to get him, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think they're going to have to get him for another visit. That would, get him in for a game maybe. I mean, he does. Keelan Smith, his teammate, is committed to the team, and look, at the end of the day, I don't know. It just the whole top five. Even when you put out that top five, because I follow Michigan recruiting as well on that side of it, and I'm like, Michigan's not even recruiting this guy, so. It feels like he's wanting more interest, but I've heard it's a Nebraska Tennessee battle, and I don't know, Arkansas is getting in the mix, but the whole thing seemed kind of weird to me. But I think another couple teams are going to jump in the mix. So if Nebraska is going to win this one, they're going to have some more competition. Another thing we should say, not that super like a ton of news, but there is some positive like vibes out there for Nebraska. Chad Simmons had a report last week and didn't say it's not like they're saying a ton about Nebraska, but every recruiting analyst is saying like Nebraska's trending up with Brandon Baker. Nebraska's a team to watch with Brandon Baker. And I know that's like, okay, well, what the hell does that even really mean?
Yeah,
But
means more
he's
clicks for them. That's what it means.
yeah, it does mean more clicks for them. But Steve Wiltfong quoted a source or cited a source, I should say, that said it was down to Texas, Ohio State, and Nebraska basically were the top three. So something definitely went haywire with Oregon. It seems like. I mean, maybe they're still in it, but they were like the heavy favorite, and he was going to decide this summer, right? And that's like when we were both kind of like, well, if he's deciding this summer and not taking a visit to Nebraska, you can kind of, it's not hard to read the tea leaves, so to speak. But now they're saying again he's going to decide somewhat soon, and he's taking a visit to Nebraska, an official visit September 16th. So I don't know, but there's reasons to watch this recruitment. I'll say that.
Nothing's ever a guarantee in recruiting, right? Nothing is
No.
ever a guarantee, especially when you're dealing with high school kids. But I mean, that's such an interesting list. Texas, who is kind of, yeah. Then you have Ohio State, who's like one of the top programs in college football, and then you have Nebraska. So I mean, we're in the top three. I like our chances, but it's going to be hard to compete with Ohio State and Texas if those are truly the three teams. And so, because Texas has always been able to kind of recruit. They've just never been able to win. So, I mean, there is that. But anyway, Ohio State to me would be the team to kind of watch out for um, if you're Nebraska in terms of this recruitment.
Yeah, and well, I mean, they could sell that he, will get to block for Arch Manning, protect Arch Manning's blind side.
That
So
is
I
true.
don't. I mean, did you know that Arch Manning can run 20 miles an hour? That's crazy.
I did not see that, but that is way faster than
Anyway,
I can run.
way faster than my thought was like, how fast does Eli run? Like 8 miles an hour?
I know, like the Mannings as quarterbacks, as pure runners, were not
I don't think
fast
the
at all.
Manning, yeah, I don't think they ever got to 20 miles an hour unless it's in a motor vehicle,
So that's
but
interesting. I wonder. I wonder.
yeah.
Huh.
But anyway, off topic, but yeah, so and I still worry about Oregon because I mean, and they do, flip people like Dan Lanning last year on signing day, they came in and flipped some people. So I mean, yeah, I still like, even if he came out and committed to Nebraska, that's one of those that, I'm not going to feel that. I'll feel great about it, but I'm still like going to be nervous until, there's just some recruits that you're nervous until you see the team announce it on signing day. And that's how I always am, and I'm trying to think who are some guys. Well, it's like Malachi Coleman, like he's just, you never know who's going to come in late or what's going to happen. And, so that was, like when I went into that day, I was like, I want to see that Malachi Coleman letter of intent announcement real soon. And we did, but it's always, I always have that with the really elite players in the back of my head. Those are the ones I'm watching for. But at any rate, yeah, I guess the other thing we should say is Grant Brix is supposed to decide this week. We've had that's been reported August 25th, which is a few
So
days
Friday.
from now. Yeah, so Friday. So we'll see. I mean, he hasn't. Nothing's been said. I haven't. There hasn't been. I guess we'll know more about Grant Brix here in a couple of days. But that would be great if he does decide on August 25th. I feel good about Nebraska's chances.
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like, it was reported, I think it was last week that Nebraska was really kind of, making a move and a push for bricks. And then if we land bricks, that at least gives us, a solid offensive lineman for the 2024 class. I mean, I would love Baker as well, but I'd want one or the other if it had to be one or the other. You know what I mean? Like I would rather have at least one than none. So I feel good about bricks. I mean, there are teams in the mix. I believe Oklahoma is one of them, if I'm not mistaken, and then Kansas State, if my memory serves me right. But I feel good about bricks. I mean, we'll have to see, what he decides, but getting bricks would be huge for this offensive line, and another commitment in what has been a good summer for offensive line recruits.
Yeah, and he is, yeah, I think it would be a really big commitment, if Nebraska was able to get, Grant Brix. Shoot, I forgot what you were saying about that you were anyway. It would be a big
Kansas
time
State,
commitment.
like what his
Oh, well, yeah. So it is Kansas. It's Nebraska. So according the recent reporting is that it's basically down to Nebraska and Oklahoma. So we'll see if that's how it plays out. If he's going to take any more visits. Nebraska's done really well with its visits. And closing those out on official visits. So I think that would not necessarily be a bad thing, but I really don't want to see it stretch beyond August because I just
uh,
usually like if you're the favorite, you want it over sooner, and the longer it goes, it just isn't favorable to you as like the leading team because things can just happen. It just the more time it is for someone else to swoop in, the worse it is. So at any rate, another thing, Trey Palmer, another touchdown, on I think it was Saturday night, Friday, yeah,
Yep.
Saturday night against the Jets. Kind of a tap back catch, 33 yards. I mean, he had like a 60-yard catch over Sauce Gardner last week. He just continues to make plays, and it's fun to see as a former Nebraska football fan. I love it.
and it's kind of funny
I
to read
mean,
all the
not a former Nebraska. It's fun to see a former Nebraska football player. Sorry.
no, it's just fun to see like all these articles saying, "Oh, some teams may have slept on Trey Palmer during the draft." Like, yeah, you think? Like, I was shocked that he fell so low uh, during the draft, but luckily for Tampa Bay, they were able to scoop him up. And as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin get older, I mean, Palmer could be a piece to build on for the future once those two retire.
Yeah, and yeah, look, right now he's looking like one of the steals of the entire draft at this point. We'll see how it works out. I mean, obviously you got to do it when the lights come on, but man, it would be fun to see him in this offense though with Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims was in the little amount of video we saw the other day, he was slinging the ball. Chuba Purdy had a couple of nice throws too, and I was trying to see who caught, all the passes. I know Duranian Bonner caught one. One looked like Malachi Coleman, but I couldn't quite tell based on the numbers. So
I feel like Purdy is gonna end up being, not. I was gonna say not as bad as he was last year, but I feel like there's something there this year with Purdy that just wasn't there last year. I mean, yes, he's healthy, but I feel like he could have a chance to really have a better, s- you know, season than last year, provided everybody stays healthy.
yeah, and like I said, it's if Jeff Sims has a really great season and is heading to the NFL, then Chuba Purdy could absolutely have a chance to start. If he can really take the next step in his development. So it is a big season for him, and at some point he's probably going to have to play, whether it's a few series, whether it's starting a game, whether it's a couple of games. That's just how things seem to work. So I'm not, I think that Jeff Sims is probably going to play and start all year, but at some point he might sprain an ankle or something, and Chuba Purdy's going to have to go in and make something happen. And he had a couple of drives last year that were okay, but it would be great to see him consistently play well and just add another reliable guy that we know can produce in that quarterback room.
And I think part of it too was last year's offense never really put Purdy in, a 2nd and 5 situation or, a 3rd and short situations, manageable situations for a number 2 quarterback. And I think that this offense will be more balanced and that will help Purdy as well. Because at times last year he just looked all out of sorts and it was easy to blame him at the time, but looking back on it, I'm not sure it was entirely all him. And I've said this before, but I just think that Mark Whipple really wanted to prove that Chubba Purdy was going to work, and when you have a coach just throwing you in there to try to prove a point, that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, and he wasn't healthy either.
No.
So the last thing to switch, I wanted to talk just a little bit of basketball. Our final topic today, and we got to talk about the man Keisei Tominaga. He's been playing for Japan, in the lead up to the FIBA World Cup, and he has just been balling out. He had 2 20-point games. He had one game, I believe, he made 6 3-pointers. They had another one where he made 4, or maybe he made 4 in both of them, but. And the other day, I think he only had 10 points, but he buried a 3 right over Luka, right in the face of Luka Doncic. So I mean, this guy is going to be an absolute star this year. So like, get ready for it. The way I'm looking at like this, he might have the best season like a Nebraska basketball player's had in a very long time. So he's going to be. I think he's going to put himself in the Tyronn Lue, Eric Piatkowski, type of realm for Nebraska basketball. So you guys know what I mean when I say that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's gonna have the playmakers around him too to really kinda some veterans to really, help him score as well. And they had it at times last year with Greasel and Walker, but I feel like this is a more complete unit, a unit with a lot of depth, a unit with a lot of experience, and a team that complements each other well. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm so glad he's coming back, and just based off of everything I've seen, and I know we say this every single time we talk about the basketball, but there's no reason why they can't have at least a season above 500 at the very least. I mean, at this point, that's the bare minimum.
I think so, and they're really, I mean, they're one of the more experienced teams in college basketball,
Yeah.
and I mean, just you if you think of, I mean, if Tominaga, I mean, the way he played like the last 10 games or so last year, I mean, I talked about on HuskerBigRed.com. I'll have to look at the numbers, but they were like first team All Big Ten type. Like if he plays like that all year, like he'll be in the conversation for a Big Ten Player of the Year, like because he was averaging like almost 18, 19, 20 points a game. I mean, if you're doing that in Big Ten play over the course of the season, like that's Big Ten Player of the Year talk. And I know that sounds crazy, but those were what the numbers were. I mean, he was on a crazy run, and I think he's gotten even better. I mean, his 3-point shot, he's just so confident in it. I mean, he's like shooting the ball like 5, 10 feet. I mean, I know the international lines. Actually, it's pretty similar to college. I mean, it might be a little closer, but at any rate, I think we're going to see him doing, more with the ball in his hands in terms of being a playmaker. And the other thing is people want to act like all this guy can do is shoot, and that's just not the case. I mean, he's one of the smartest basketball players in the Big Ten. I mean, his ball movement skills are incredible. I'm just, yeah, you can probably tell I'm a little bit excited and like, but I'm sure, it's funny to me. I'm sure that Fred Hoiberg and the guys like got their popcorn ready, like watching, Japan and, just seeing Keisei and seeing what he can do and just being really excited to get their chance to work with him this season.
Yeah, and you talk about his movement with the ball. His movement without the ball is equally as good, and he just brings so much to the game. Some of the more little things that you see over the course of a basketball game, and I'm just really excited to see him. I think he has a chance to really be one of the most electric players in college basketball. I mean, the fans love him already, and if he can play like he's played over this stretch of games here, over this tournament here, then we're in for a really fun season.
And Rank Mass has been, playing
Yeah,
for the
he has played
Netherlands.
well.
So yeah, there's some guys to watch there with the FIBA World Cup. So we'll have that updated as well. We'll have some stuff on that at HuskerBigRed.com. So make sure you guys check out HuskerBigRed.com and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're gonna have a ton of great Nebraska content coming forward. We'll have another live stream on Saturday morning, which actually will be the first week 0 of college football. So that'll be pretty fun. Not that we're going to care that much about it, but I'll definitely be watching, some San Jose State and USC, Notre Dame, Navy. I mean, I don't expect any of those games to be great, but it's just good to have like actual football again.
Yeah, I mean, It has seemed like a long off season, and yet it went by quickly. So
It did. And the season's we're gonna be like sitting here soon, December, after we accept our bowl invitation, being like, man, that season went by fast.
bowl invitation. I'm gonna be wearing my Big Ten West champion gear on the show once that comes in. So
There you go. There you
so we'll
go.
see.
I,
We'll
I
see.
like it.
I mean, it's not. It doesn't sound completely crazy, but I think there is going to be competition, obviously. But hey, if this team can do what it's capable of, then I really do think the ceiling is very high for this team this year.
I definitely think Wisconsin's over. I mean, I couldn't believe that the AP had them ranked in the top. I'm like, I mean, I get they
Yeah,
had a good defense last year, and I get they have Braylon Allen, but it's like, what have they really, what have they really proven outside? What has Tanner Mordecai proven other than he can put up big numbers in the American Conference?
and there's a lot to prove with Luke Fickle too, because I mean, he
Yep.
did a good job at Cincinnati, but it's Cincinnati. Like
He
it's
did
not.
do a good job at Ohio
He
State,
did.
and Urban Meyer basically took essentially the same team the next year and went undefeated. So, I mean, I think he is a good coach. I'm not saying that, but I just I don't buy like the hype about Wisconsin. I mean, it's like everybody's expecting them to be the normal
Yeah,
Wisconsin on defense and everything, just like with a fancy new offense and a better head coach. And it's like it's not that easy. So we'll see. I mean, they did get some nice pieces, and if everything, I mean, yeah, if Mordecai works out great, they probably are going to be pretty good, And if Luke Fickle can get because even last year their defense wasn't like a typical Wisconsin defense, and it hasn't been the past couple of years. So we'll see. But it's like the same thing with Nebraska. If Jeff Sims is like, third, if Jeff Sims is like third team all Big Ten, then yeah, this team might be Big Ten West champs, like it's not, that's just how it is.
you know what scares me is Jim Leonard as a senior football analyst at Illinois. That scares me more honestly than
Yeah.
anything else. I mean, Brett Bielema already has his Illinois program playing hard and trending in the right direction. Now adding, Leonard to the equation. I mean, that was a hire that went under the radar a little bit for Illinois, but I think it's a really good one.
It is, and they lost Ryan Walters to Purdue, and that was a really big loss because he was spectacular, as a defensive coordinator there. And so I would be, I would be, if I was the Illinois defensive coordinator, like I would be a little bit worried because if like the defense falls off, like you got Jim Leonard
You got
there to
Jim
just like
waiting in the
take
wings.
your job. But no, I'm sure that, well, it's just interesting, because like a couple of years ago, Jim Leonard turned down the Packers job, the DC job, because he wanted to stay at Wisconsin, and then he thought he was going to be the head coach, and I thought he was going to be the head coach.
Yeah, I
I
thought
was like surprised when they hired Luke Fickle. I thought they were going to give it to Jim, and I think he would have done a pretty good job. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be coordinating another defense soon in college football, and maybe it'll be Illinois if the Fighting Illini don't start off great. But no, I don't think that'll happen. But it is a nice backup plan to have one of the guys that I think is a pretty good defensive coordinator, just like being an analyst.
I mean, things change in a year. I mean, here we thought that Nebraska at this time last year was gonna finally get over the hump, and now look where we are a year later. So there you go.
Things change in a day in college football. What's
Yeah,
true today might not be true tomorrow.
that is
So
very true.
that's why you got to check out huskerbigred.com and hit subscribe. And at any rate, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and thanks for following along. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.